I realize quite clearly that in giving a review of Dark Souls I am 5 months too late. This does not disturb me, however. After giving it some thought, I came to the realization that I can review this game from a different perspective than most, if not all, other reviews. Firstly, I have the advantage of having played the game nearly endlessly for those last 5 months, and have therefore experienced the vast majority of what the game has to offer. No stone unturned, I'd like to think. Secondly, I can review this game in the full glory of the 5 elements that I appreciate the most when hoping to enjoy a title. So with that, it's time for my daily massacre. 5 internet points if you get that reference. Number 1, gameplay. I know that seems obvious, but I'm still amazed at how many people are seeking graphics out before the actual construction of a game. All the shiny objects in the world don't matter if they are shattered mirror pieces on the floor. That said, Dark Souls has tremendous gameplay. It's a dungeon crawler at its absolute finest. The only thing the game is missing is collectibles that have to be sought after new equipment is found. Think Castlevania. Of course, Dark Souls is a different kind of experience, one based more around survival and ability. The combat is top-notch, the design nearly perfect, and the multiplayer fleshed out quite well. If I had to give this category a rating all its own, I wouldn't. I told you there are 5 categories. Number 2, sound and music. I know it sounds strange that I would value these things so highly, but I do. It's not just in video games either. All forms of modern media I am consistently listening for and evaluating the audible cues. I love it when a breaking bone makes me cringe, or brass section crescendos, or someone invades my world in Dark Souls. That noise makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up even still. The sounds of Dark Souls are gritty and attentive, helping create an atmosphere of surreal desperation and wonder. The score for Dark Souls is outstanding, perhaps the best I've ever heard. There are very few tracks that I wouldn't listen to on a car ride. I have to admit that there is more choir involved than I usually prefer. However, it works so immensely well with the game and the associated bosses that it stands out amongst most other games. The moment when Ornstein and Smough are charging you for the first time and the timpani drums burst is perhaps the grandest in all of gaming history. Number 3, animation. This is vastly more important to me than graphics. The reason being that, especially in modern gaming, the preciseness of what I am seeing is everything. Dark Souls is no exception and does not disappoint. The combat of Dark Souls is moment-to-moment, precise and exact. Every single action you take is calculated, and you need to plan out your every move. That doesn't make it only a game of strategy, however. You also have to be swift and able to adapt, while still keeping your cool and exploiting an enemy's weakness. To the point, it's the greatest combat system out there, and this is largely in part to the dynamic animations. Number 4, world and atmosphere. Aside from the sound effects and music, there is a visual component to factor in as well. Similarly to what I've mentioned, the graphics of a game are only going to matter if they are the construction blocks of a beautiful world. I want to say this quite clearly. Dark Souls has, without a shred of competition, the greatest world ever created. The fact that the first safety zone, the Firelink Shrine, leads all the way to the bottom of the hellish Lost Izalith, directly, without loading screens, might very well be the greatest accomplishment in video games to date. It still blows my mind that 2 elevator rides and 40 seconds of walking take me from the Undead Parish to the Valley of the Drakes. 1 shortcuts are unlocked. Also, the bits of flame floating about create such a wonderful touch. Number 5, story. At first blush, Dark Souls does not seem to contain very much story at all. It also doesn't seem like a game that needs it. The point is to stay alive while an entire world tries to disembowel you. However, if you look closer and allow yourself to fall in love with the places and people From has created, you'll find so much lore that your head will spin, which the mobs also want to see, by the way. This won't be all that surprising to hear this from me if you've watched what I've already released of my Dark Souls lore series, but it still has to be said. Frankly, I would have still given the game high praise before I looked as deeply as I do now. I was satiated enough by seeing the 2 endings and their simplicity. For those of you who scoff at the story in either Souls game, you should look and listen again. So what does all this mean as far as a rating? Well, I can certainly say that the game is not for everyone, though I hope that everyone purchases it so more can be made in its vein. Perhaps the most upsetting aspect about Dark Souls personally was that 3 close friends of mine who played and owned Demon Souls did not bother to pick up this gem. Why? Primarily, they did not want to go through another trudging experience, one that would beat them down over and over again. Now, I love it. The acclaimed difficulty was what first attracted me to Demon's Souls, that it was a From title. That's what I'm driving at, however. The Souls series is for many, but not for all. There will be people that will not want to put up with the bullcrap the game throws at you relentlessly. Even the experienced players will still find death at parts they thought mastered. Also, the game does have its flaws, I have to be fair. There are parts of the game that simply do not belong. They aren't merely challenging or brutal, they are the epitome of bad decisions. The Anor Londo archers are my greatest example. Some people claim them easy, and I too have had rounds in which I get past my first try without a hitch. However, I've also recently had the joy of rolling 17 times, despite that I was directly beside the archer. It was ridiculous to say the least. I don't believe there is one person who has not quit the game out of frustration from one bad experience or another. 99% of us come back for more the following day, but that's no excuse. Wrestling with a powered-up Ornstein is a brutal, unforgiving challenge. Rolling 17 times to dodge an arrow is an unbearable and flatly stupid flaw. On top of that, the hitbox for backstabbing is far too large, and sometimes poise makes certain setups undefeatable by others. The lag sometimes causes multiplayer to be useless, though that has mostly been fixed. It's almost a shame to think that with these things corrected, I would rate Dark Souls a 10 out of 10. That game I would never put down, likely losing my girlfriend, job, and sanity. I suppose I should be thankful that I am only obsessed with Dark Souls and not attempting to live it. A 9 out of 10, a glorious 9.